Jessica Jones demonstrates how she helps intermediate to advanced learners develop listening skills using authentic taped interviews.
Today we're going to talk some more about culture and traditions, customs in different countries. So to start, I want you to just think of one question that you would like to ask other students in the class about their culture. The class I teach is a high intermediate and advanced level class for learners who attend a 20-hour-a-week English for Work program that's designed specifically for new refugees and immigrants who may be entering the workforce for the first time. Adan, can you be a little bit more specific? Okay. You're thinking about it? Okay. What do you want to ask, Min? I'm not sure I understand that question. So, for example, you could ask someone about holidays or weddings or parties, family, work, different traditions in their culture. Okay. Here we only offer 3 levels of ESL, and since so many learners come in at very low levels, the students grouped together at the higher end of the spectrum make up a very multi-level class. Most of them are intermediate to high intermediate, with a few advanced learners thrown in. But like many programs in the country, we group students primarily by reading level. Everybody takes a reading test when they enter, and that's how they're placed in a class, which means that when it comes to listening and speaking skills, students can be all over the board in terms of their ability levels. All right, as soon as you have your question finished, I'd like you to stand up, walk around, and ask 2 people your question.
And the next one, they make the people happy, and they sing song.
The objectives for this lesson is I really wanted to give students a chance to do some authentic listening to both Americans and people from other cultures talking about customs and cultures.
And the way
I noted that the students really like to engage each other about their own countries. I'm lucky enough to have a diverse classroom where people are from all over. And I wanted them to start with something that was already familiar, their own prior knowledge. So I want to share a couple photos with you. 2 days ago, I got an email from my very good friend from college, and she said, "We got married. We decided we wanted to get married. We called our families, and in 3 days, we went to Las Vegas and we got married." So these are the pictures from their wedding. Yeah, it was very fast, and it was only a very small ceremony. Only their parents and their brothers and sisters were there, no other people. And I wouldn't say that's not normal for Americans, but lots of Americans do that. They have a very small ceremony.
Jessica shares a personal story to introduce the idea of cultural contrasts.
Maybe they don't expend a lot of money, I think.
Well, that's right. It's a good reason not to have a big wedding, right? What's another reason why you might not have a big wedding?
Well, maybe you don't have enough money.
Yeah, you don't have enough money? Some people don't like the pressure. They feel really nervous if they have to have a big wedding. And they think, I just want to have a little wedding, have a little party. Right? Now, on the other hand, I went about 3 years ago to India for my friend's wedding in India. And I'll pass around these pictures. These are pictures from her wedding, and they had more than 500 people at their wedding. Yeah, and that's not unusual in India. In India, you are expected to invite everybody you know to your wedding. Yeah, so here, I'll pass them down this table and then pass them to the other table. Mm-hmm. Which do you prefer, a big wedding or a small wedding?
In my town, the wedding is big. Very big.
Very big?
Yes, big.
Wow. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is We're going to talk about different traditions in the U.S., things that people usually do or things that you're expected to do. So I'm going to give each person a slip, and one slip is the first part of the sentence, and the other slip is the second part of the sentence. For example, when a child graduates from high school, they often receive gifts of money.
Using an interactive task for pre-listening draws learners into the topic.
And then what people do. When someone graduates from high school and they get a high school diploma, people often give them gifts of money. Okay? One reason for that is just to provide, get students thinking about the topic before we start the listening task, anticipating what kinds of language and themes might come up in the listening task. I also think it's really important to provide information that's interesting and relevant and authentic. Anyone would want to be engaged by interesting material when they come to class, not just something that's been formulated to try to address a particular grammar topic. So I'm going to give each person a slip. I want you to stand up, walk around, and try to find the person who has the matching part of your situation. Okay?
The same.
I don't think mine's the same. Mine says you're supposed to kiss a friend at midnight.
Gets married
You are best for the party.
when you're in
Yeah.
Usually prepare for party.
How many? You are not expected to offer the food to the other people. Yeah.
When someone moves into a new house,
When someone
people usually
One year
I don't
or
think
even
so.
about
yeah together.
yeah, maybe.
maybe same idea.
Yeah. Kind of match?
Yeah.
And when a couple gets married,
These were all related to American customs, which is interesting for the students. It's also a great way to get them started thinking about what's appropriate or inappropriate in an American context, especially because many of them haven't been in the country that long. They're likely to be working and going to school alongside Americans, and these give them both things to talk about in their free time, as well as an understanding of appropriate and inappropriate behavior.
Pay for the party?
Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not always,
No,
but
no.
that's the tradition. The tradition is that the woman's family pays for the party.
Pay for the party?
Yeah. That's okay with you? Good. Were you surprised by any of the traditions? Jose, were you surprised that a woman's family usually pays for the party? Yeah. How is it done in your country?
Then
The man's
they
family.
pay.
Okay. What else? Any other traditions that were surprising? Any traditions that are the same in your culture?
the same.
Yeah, they are the same.
What's that one, Adan? Will you read it?
But when someone dies, people bring prepared food for the family.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is what we do all the
I
time.
think that's similar in a lot of cultures. You have all had the experience of going to another country, and often when we go to another country, something surprises us. So the first time that I went to India, one of the things that surprised me right away was I saw teenagers, boys, walking down the street holding hands, or they'd walk down the street with their arm around each other. And in the United States, boys and girls will hold hands, like teenage boys and girls, but teenage boys would never hold hands with each other. But in India, it's the opposite. Boys will hold hands and put their arms around each other, but boys and girls never hold hands in public. So we're going to watch a little video, and this is a video of 3 people who have all traveled to different countries. Okay? And what I want you to listen for first is where have they traveled or lived, and what surprised them.
Each time learners listen to the interviews, they are given a different task that gives them a specific purpose for listening.
When I first moved in, there were a couple of things that really surprised me.
The first time they listened, I gave them sort of broad questions to help them just start focusing on who were the speakers, what were they talking about.
As a pedestrian, you were pretty safe. I lived in Barcelona, which is a big city, and it's an old city too, so there are many, many narrow streets, and cars would go really fast driving down the streets, and pedestrians would have to watch out for the cars rather than the other way around.
Unscripted interviews give learners practice listening to authentic language.
Fireworks that started right over our heads, and the sparks, it felt like the sparks were going to fall down on top of us. Here in the United States, usually you have to stand far away from where the fireworks are, but in Spain they would shoot them right over your heads. It was really loud, it was fun, but it was really scary too. So at first I was really surprised by these sorts of safety things, and I feel like I kind of got used to them. I got used to sort of looking around and being more aware of where I was. But it took me a while to get comfortable with that.
In this case, I actually taped the interviews with people that I knew. Video is a nice resource, although not absolutely necessary. Audio by itself works just fine. And I did that so that I could control the content a little bit more, something specifically about culture and about what surprised people. But I often also find resources for listening lessons from materials that are already out there.
Every evening, kids come home, they do their homework, and they're expected to spend time with their parents. And the same thing on weekends. There'd be very long weekend lunches. That's a custom that I really, really appreciated in France.
Okay. So first, what country?
France.
France. Okay. And what was different or what surprised her?
The teenagers not working after 16 years and friends not.
Mm-hmm. So which country do teens work at 16?
Here.
Here, yep.
I've lived in the United States for over 20 years now, but one of the first things that struck me when I came here has to do with food and eating habits. The first thing that struck me was how people eat in the street and in public. You would see someone drinking pop in the bus. The other thing that I found odd was how in an office environment people would sit at their desk and eat alone. I always considered food or lunch a collective activity where we would sit together and relax and enjoy conversation and so on. I found eating on your own rather sad and unhealthy somehow.
First of all, what country is he talking about in the video? Yeah, he's talking about the United States, but he is from Iran. Okay? And what did he notice or what surprised him about the United States?
A lot of people eat food on the street.
Okay. Eating food on the streets. What else? Mm-hmm. People eating alone. Mm-hmm. So we're going to listen to these again, and this time I have a writing assignment for you to do. So I want everybody at this table to take purple paper. At this table you can take an orange paper. So on the side you see that there are 3 names, Julia, Betsy, and Sina. Those are the 3 different people that we just watched. Okay? And then at the top there are 4 questions. Where did the person live? What is the practice or custom? How is it different in their country? And how do they feel about the practice? Now, some of the information is already written for you. So you need to listen only for the information that is missing. And then write. For learners who may not have a lot of experience with these kind of authentic listening activities, or maybe at a lower level, it's a really nice way to sort of graduate them up so that they can focus on just half of the information. It's not nearly as overwhelming as having to fill in all the information. It's also an authentic sort of note-taking task. It's the kind of thing that we actually have to do a lot when we're filling in schedules and forms. Okay, You ready to listen again? Who is this? It's also more authentic to have a purpose for listening rather than listening to a whole conversation and then afterwards trying to respond to open-ended questions or questions that ask for very specific details.
And it's an old city too, so there are many, many narrow streets. And cars would go really fast driving down the streets. Here in the United States, usually you have to stand far away from where the fireworks are.
A grid like the one that the students used helps them just listen for particular information. So before we even started listening, we went over the questions, made sure everybody understood what they were listening for and how to fill out the grid. And then that way, they're not required to understand everything and try to reflect on everything they hear, just on specific information that's targeted in the worksheet.
You have to go off to a job. That would never happen there in France. Every evening, kids come home, they do their homework, and they're expected to spend time with their parents. That happens sometimes in the United States, but much less. That's a custom that I really, really appreciated in France.
I've lived in the United States for over 20 years now, but one of the first things that struck me when I came here has to do with food and eating habits.
Now, take a minute to think about what you heard and fill in information that you know but you didn't have time to write, okay? And then we're going to listen to it again.
Listening one more time allows learners to check their work and fill in anything they missed.
And one more time. Remember, you don't have to write full sentences. You just need to get the main ideas on a paper. Okay, so if you have some boxes that you're not sure, we're going to listen one more time. All right, so now what I'd like you to do is talk to the other people at your table, okay, and compare your answers. Do you agree or disagree with what the other people wrote? Okay, so talk at your own table about the answers that you filled in.
Yeah, you have to add one S, that's it. Go together, fireworks. You are so good.
They are safety. They feel safety.
I'm safety.
I'm safety.
Yeah, you have to spell that word. I'm safety. You like a safety?
Checking work with a peer instead of the teacher develops learner autonomy.
I don't know how to spell the
Right here, you can say safety.
tradition.
I don't know how to
tradition, custom, same custom. Holiday.
More safety or less safety? More safety. No, I think you have it here. What did you write?
Really appreciate.
She's really
Good. And what country is that? Is that the U.S. or France? Now, when we started, this group started with different information than this group. Okay?
Barcelona. Cars very fast.
Having listened for only half of the information, learners from each group report what they understood to someone from the other group.
The way is not correct.
It's a great way to have the learners check their own information and provide an authentic reason for communicating with each other.
They feel about the pride.
very careful.
I really like using a jigsaw activity to help promote higher order thinking as well, because then learners have to compare answers, and these questions were open-ended enough that someone might have written, she was afraid, and someone else wrote, she thought it was unsafe. And now they have to decide, are those answers similar enough that they're both correct? Is it possible that even if they're different, they could be both correct? Or in fact, do they conflict with each other? And so that really forces students to do some higher order thinking. Depending on experience, I mean, even in the US, customs change a lot from region to region or depending on the context. So I love activities that don't have a right or wrong answer.
even though it takes students a while to get used to the idea that there isn't a right answer to an activity. But we spend a lot of time in our class discussing whether there could be 2 or more right answers and why one person might think that something is correct while somebody else thinks that a different answer is correct. And it gives a nice chance for students to authentically debate in class why they feel that a particular answer is correct. Collectively, he's talking not about the United States, but he's talking about Iran. Yeah. Yeah, so that part is, you heard the right thing, but he was not talking about the United States, he was talking about Iran. And what about safety in general? Do you think safety in the United States is higher than in your country? Yes? Like 80% more. Okay, that's very exact, Adan. 80% more. Okay, good.
When I came here, I started to see how the person stopped when you have to cross the street.
Yeah.
In my country, you have to be careful because if you want to cross, sometimes you can die if you don't have.
Yeah, no, it's true.
It's very difficult.
Any listening lesson ends with follow-up or post-listening activities.
In this way.
More like that.
Okay.
Because in my country, if we have a food and if we eat and we call the friend and parents and another one,
Yeah.
we eat together.
I know, I see it at lunchtime in my classroom. Everybody comes together and eats. It's very nice. I like that. I like that practice.
In Mexico, no eat in the car, only eat in one place, a restaurant or house.
No, wait. Jose, where are you from?
Mexico.
Mexico. And you're from Mexico.
Well,
But you have different opinion. Different parts of the country. Right. So Mexico is a big country and the traditions are different in different parts of the country. So this is an activity, I think, that you've done before. We're going to have you talk to different people about what the custom is in their country and what they know about the custom in the United States. But I have some new vocabulary that I want you to practice first.
In order for a communicative speaking activity to be successful, the teacher may need to pre-teach particular phrases or vocabulary.
Or it's a bad idea. If I say you're supposed to do your homework every day, it's a good idea, right? It's something I want you to do. It's something that I expect you to do. You're supposed to. In one of the follow-up activities, students were given a list of phrases that they could refer to talk about things that are a custom or that people usually do. And this is an example where the language came specifically out of the task rather than the other way around. And I like to give students some sentences that they might be familiar with, as well as some new ones, to allow them a chance to sort of rehearse these phrases in an authentic context. And it was great to see the students really utilizing these phrases once they got into the interview activity. States, are you expected to offer your food to somebody else? No. You can, but you're not expected to. But most of the time, you are expected to call first.
Do you call first? Can we visit? We need to US. If we went to visit our friends, we need to call first. Yeah.
Yes. People usual.
This was, again, a nice chance for them to talk with each other and build community around their own experiences and their own countries, as well as a chance to get to know more about the U.S. for students who may not have been here that long. And it allowed some students who've been here longer to be experts on American culture rather than relying on the teacher to be the expert on American culture.
Anybody expect to be?
You're supposed to. You have to ask about my country.
In your country, how
Nice.
have choosing a husband?
In your country, how do parents help in choosing a wife or husband for you?
No, I choose. Choose for myself.
In the US, it's called only name. Only name.
The interview activity also gave students a chance to do some more higher order thinking. So questions were a little more open-ended. They asked students how they feel, their attitudes about different customs, and preferences about customs. Those require students to dig a little deeper, use some different language, rather than just providing simple statements about what they do in their home country.
While monitoring learners during the interview, Jessica noticed a language issue that needed to be addressed.
Okay. Take a look up here. I want you to think about, so these sentences, you're supposed to, you're not supposed to. I want you to tell me, how strong do you think it is? There are always surprises in every lesson. I think one of the surprises in this lesson was that students were not as familiar with phrases of frequency, like sometimes, usually, and never. And so we did a very quick activity toward the end just to review those phrases by putting them on a continuum and let students debate a little bit about where those phrases ought to fall on the continuum from 100% to 0%. And if I had known ahead of time that they weren't familiar with the vocabulary, I might have given them an opportunity to do that in pairs or in small groups. But it worked fine to do it on the board as a quick review. Between 80% and 100% maybe, okay? You're supposed to, right? It's what is expected, but not absolutely you must. Where is you're not expected to?
0.
You can't do it?
You're not supposed to do not do it.
So for example, in the United States, you're not expected to offer your food to other people when you eat in public. Does it mean you cannot offer your food?
10%.
Yeah, I think Maria's right. It's more like 40 or 50%. It's okay. You can, but other people don't expect you to. Okay, we're almost finished. Tell me one thing that you learned today, or one thing that surprised you today. What else? What did you learn, or what surprised you?
Surprised me about that. We visit our friend, and we need to we need to call the phone first.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. If you're going to visit an American friend, they will expect you to call on the phone first. Otherwise, if you come and knock at the door, they'll say, "Oh, hi, why are you here?" They'll be very surprised. In every listening lesson, I try to have 3 main components. A pre-listening activity that activates students' prior knowledge and helps them predict what content might be in what they're about to listen to. And then a specific listening task where they know what the purpose is and they have some idea what they're listening for. And then finally, we do some follow-up activities that help them process what they've just heard and relate it to their own lives and to experiences where they can use the language outside of the classroom. I felt like everybody was really able to participate fully in this lesson, and it was clear that some students understood more of the conversation than others, but everybody was able to pull out the main ideas from the listening task, and they were able to communicate with each other and relate that information to their own lives and their own country's customs. Even students who are sometimes quiet get really engaged when there's something of interest, so a topic that's interesting to everybody, and where they're up and out of their seats and working with each other for communication. It's always a more lively lesson than if I try to stand at the front of the room and guide the instruction myself.
American culture, like students don't call the teacher. They only call the name.
Yeah.
or they call the mother-in-law. They call the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one do you think is more respectful?
They should call, like, if mother-in-law, they should call mother-in-law.
Jessica's final questions provide closure to the lesson.
Most respectful is probably to call someone Mr. or Mrs. Like, my name is Jessica Jones. You would call me Mrs. Jones. That would be the most respectful. But many teachers will say, don't call me Mrs. Jones, just call me Jessica. That would be for an adult class. But children usually call their teachers by their last name. I think in the U.S., especially when you are an adult and you're going to college or you're coming to adult classes, the expectation is you are equal with the teacher. So you can call me by my first name. Yeah. So different expectations, right?